Let's bring in House Minority Whip, Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise, to discuss the fallout from the events of January 6th and how things stand now in D.C. Congressman, welcome back. Good to see you.
Shannon, always good to be back with you.
I want to play a little something from former CIA Director John Brennan. We played this a little earlier in the show and get your response. Here's what he said about the continuing threat and why the fencing is still up.
There's an active plot to try to blow up the Capitol of the United States government. That should send chills down the spine of every American. And unfortunately, so many of these Republican senators continue to ignore the threat that we are facing from these extremists who have access to weaponry.
An active plot to try to blow up the Capitol. Congressman, that's an alarming statement. What have you been told? What do you know about security issues currently?
Shannon, I haven't been aware of those kind of threats. But look, if law enforcement is aware, there's ways that they can go find out who those people are that are making those threats, and they need to prosecute them at the full extent of the law. The idea that you've got barricaded barbed wire fences around the Capitol for extended periods of time, look, this is the people's house, and this has got to be a place where people can come and petition their government in a safe and effective way. If there's a need to bring in National Guard, that's been discussed before, and have a process where they can be deployed quickly, but don't shut the entire Capitol complex down where the American people aren't even able to come and see government work. There's a way to do this properly. Again, if they have a direct threat, make that threat known to us. I haven't seen it, but make sure you have an ability to protect the ability for us to function as a governing democracy without shutting out the ability for the American people to come see democracy work in person.
Yeah, and National Guardsmen and women to go home to their families and their regular jobs when the threat has passed, and many of them are waiting to find out about that as well. The House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, has talked about putting together a 9/11-style commission to investigate the tragic events of January 6th. There's been a lot made about the fact that it wouldn't essentially be equal in partisanship seats that were assigned. There's been discussion of 7 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Members of the actual 9/11 Commission have said it will take away the integrity, and fewer people will trust it if there is not either a nonpartisan or a bipartisan, equal bipartisan makeup of that commission or investigative body. What do you make of that?
Right. Look, all of us who were very alarmed by what happened on January 6th and want to get to the bottom of it, also make sure really that we're focusing on how to prevent that from happening again. If you're going to call it an actual 9/11 commission, then set it up like the 9/11 commission. As you said, it was an equally Republican and Democrat split commission, not a partisan commission, as Speaker Pelosi's proposing. So this idea that she's referring to it as a 9/11 commission, but then saying she's going to have a heavily Democratic slanted partisan viewpoint on it, that's not what the American people want. They want something that's looking at this not as a partisan exercise, but as a way to ensure that we can secure American democracy. And by the way, people are finding it very interesting that while Speaker Pelosi wants to keep walls up around the Capitol, they're taking walls down on our southern border. So either walls work or they don't. And walls were working at our southern border to protect America, but they took those walls down and put the walls up at the doorstep of American democracy here at the Capitol. Let's be consistent about it. Let's be bipartisan about it. Don't have some sham exercise. Go to what 9/11 was. That was a equally Republican, Democrat, equally split commission where they actually got to the bottom of what happened at 9/11 and how to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, and people across the board do want answers about exactly what led to that day, the breakdowns, what happened, and again, to prevent it from endangering lawmakers and others across Washington. Again, I want to ask you about the $2 trillion COVID relief bill that is coming together on the Hill. This is what President Biden said about those who are complaining about the size of it.
Critics say the plan is too big, that it costs too much. But let me ask a rhetorical question. What would you have me cut?
Well, your Republican colleague, Congressman Carlos Jimenez, he listed on Twitter all the things that he thought were just a quick. He says, I only have 280 characters, but here are a few of my suggestions. And he talks about bailouts and projects. What do you think? How do you answer the president? Because he says it's a rhetorical question, but how do you answer what he says about what to strip out?
And my response is, first, President Biden, how much time do you have? Less than 9% of this bill that he's brought before Congress has to do with public health. And in fact, if you look at the bill, the first thing I would say is let's help families, let's help small businesses who are struggling, and let's make sure we get kids back in school. Do you know, Shannon, that in this bill that President Biden is bringing, 95% of this money will not even be spent this year for reopening schools. So it begs the question, what are you doing with all of that money? They're giving $41 billion to the state of California in this bill, when Governor Newsom just announced last week they have a $10 billion surplus. $10 billion, we're going to borrow money from our kids and grandkids that's going to set them back for a long, long time to give them money, and they've already got a $10 billion surplus. We ought to be focusing on opening up schools. They rejected an amendment that would have said all of this money that goes to schools has to be tied to reopening schools. It begs the question again, what are they doing with the money if they're not using it to help families, small businesses, reopening schools? They even rejected an amendment that would have said, let's double the number of vaccines. Shouldn't we be focused on putting vaccines in the arms of people? They were against that. They were against Governor Cuomo being required to disclose the number of nursing home deaths in New York before New York gets tens of billions of dollars in this bill. I think people are figuring out this bill is a pork-laden liberal wish list. It has nothing to do with COVID relief.
Right now, it appears headed for passage along party lines because of the reconciliation framework that's being used to get it done. Congressman Scalise, thank you so much.
Always great to be with you, Shannon. Thanks.